You may have to
So,
give a couple of minutes. It's just, let some people come in, huh?
yes, and I'll just cross-check to just give me 1 second. Okay, I hope I'm audible and visible. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on financing urban infrastructure hosted by the Indian School. Sorry, just a sec, just a sec. I'm so sorry. I think there was an overlap of my voice. I hope it's clear now. Sharu, am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
Kuhu.
Oh, I'm so sorry. There was a glitch. There was an overlap of my voice. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on financing urban infrastructure hosted by the Indian School of Public Policy. So urban infrastructure is at the heart of building resilient, inclusive, and sustainable cities. With the recent union budget placing a strong emphasis on infrastructure financing, the discussion could not be more timely. And I think with that, what the challenges there are at financing urban infrastructure, we have uh, somebody from the industry who has been in urban financing, who has been into urbanization for more than 3-4 decades. So I think he'll be the best person to talk about it. But yes, and we have our distinguished speakers, Dr. O.P. Agarwal, and our alumnus from, if I'm not wrong, from the 2023 batch, Ms. Shalu Sapnani. So before we deep dive into the discussions and the topic, let me just give a brief introduction about our speakers today. So Dr. O.P. Agarwal is a professor of practice at Indian School of Public Policy, a former IAS officer. He has served in key roles with the Government of India and the state of Assam, including authoring the National Urban Transport Policy. Dr. Agarwal has held leadership positions at the World Bank, the Indian School of Business, and as CEO of the World Resource Institute. With a PhD from IIT Delhi and the advanced degrees from MIT, he is a leading voice on urban transport, infrastructure financing, and governance. Thank you, OP, for being a part of the webinar. Then we have our alumnus, who's also been a student with OP sir, who's studied in the classes. So we have Ms. Shalu Sapnani, who's currently working with Janagre. She is a public finance and urban governance professional with 7 years of experience working at the intersection of urban finance, reform, fiscal decentralization, and institutional strengthening. In Janagre, she supports the 16th Finance Commission and State Finance Commissions on revenue augmentation and devolution frameworks. So I think we have a perfect mix who can talk about the urban infrastructure financing. And without any delay, I would leave it to the experts to please start the discussion. OP, it would be great if we could start from you, if you can share your views on what are the challenges, what are the avenues.
Thanks very much, Kuhu. I'll share my views through a small presentation.
Yes.
Let me just share that. Uh, so are you able to see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me just put it on a. Okay, good. So let me pick up from here, and thanks very much, Kuhu, for the introduction. Thanks to so many of you for having joined. It's a delight to be talking to you, and a delight to meet Shalu again after almost 3 years now since she passed out of ISPP. But great to have you back, Shalu. So let me start by talking a little bit about why cities are so critical for India. Why are they so important for India? 3 or 4 reasons why they're critical. One is we've articulated an ambition to become a $30 trillion economy by 2047, which means by the 100th year of our independence, we want our economy to be almost 10 times what it is today. That's a fairly rapid growth, but I, for one, believe that if we get our head down to it, we can achieve this. But to achieve this, it is cities that are going to be fundamental. They have to not only accommodate that growth, they have to proactively enable this growth. Second, we've also made commitments, climate change commitments about becoming net zero. That means no carbon emissions, no net carbon emissions to become net zero by 2070. we've also made bold commitments about reducing these emissions by 2030. Again, it is cities that are going to be critical for this because most of the emissions growth will happen in cities. Because the economy will grow in cities, they will also be the more emitting geographies. Third, we have a demographic dividend. That means we have a fairly young population. And young population is supposed to be good to help in economic growth. But if they are to help in economic growth, we have to take advantage of this demographic dividend by finding jobs for this young population. And most of this job growth will also happen in cities. What we also find is despite all these things for which cities are important, there's also another reason for which they are important. Because of the densities that they have, they are extremely vulnerable to disasters. COVID showed us cities are the most vulnerable because of those densities. So we have to look at economic growth, we have to look at accommodating economic growth, we have to reduce emissions, we have to find jobs, and at the same time, we have to make sure that in cities, COVID kind of pandemics do not wreak havoc. So that's why cities become extremely important for us. But to be able to do that, there are huge financing needs. Now, two studies that were, when you talk about financing, there are really two different types of finance that are required. One is the capital finance, that is one-time finance that you need at an early stage of a project. And that is really for building a lot of the infrastructure, water supply networks, sanitation systems, roads and bridges, schools, hospitals, all these kinds of things which need to be built. That is the capital expenses. But it's not enough to just build them. We have to operate them. We have to manage them. So that again means things like paying staff salary, paying for fuel, paying for repairs and maintenance. Those kinds of things come in at the operating expenses. These are the two broad types of finances. But how much do they need? What is the quantum that is needed? And typically what happens is capital expenses come from investors' funds, equity. Now, most of this urban infrastructure is by the municipal corporations. They own them. So they are supposed to be investing in them. Otherwise, you raise debts, you raise grants, all those kinds of things. And operating expenses really come from your earnings. But if you talk about how much do they need, the numbers are huge. There are two studies in this case which are relevant. One is a study done by McKinsey. It's a report called India's Urban Awakening. And then there is a committee that was set up, the High Power Expert Committee set up by the Government of India under Dr. Ishar Ahluwalia. And what these reports indicated, McKinsey said about $1.2 trillion over 20 years, which is roughly about little over 50 lakh crores. And they said O&M expenses of about $1 trillion, which again is about roughly 46 lakh crores if you convert it to rupees. So essentially what they are talking of is almost 5 lakh crores each year for the next 20 years. 100 lakh crores over 20 years, roughly about 5 lakh crores per year. That's the magnitude of money required for as per the McKinsey study. The High Power Expert Committee was a little more modest because they didn't probably take into account all the different sectors. But the numbers that they came across was capital investment of about 30 lakh crores and O&M of about 20 lakh crores. So roughly about 60 lakh crores or roughly about 3 lakh crores per year. So just keep this at the back of your mind that the requirements are somewhere around 3 lakh to 5 lakh crores per year based on these two studies. But so 3 to 5 lakh crores per year over the next 20 years, each year. Now, let's go back to some of India's mega schemes. So the JNNURM was the first mega scheme that came up, launched in 2005. It allocated 50,000 crores for 7 years, which is roughly about 7,000 crores a year. Remember, the need is somewhere between 3 to 5 lakh crores a year. So it allocated only about 7,000 crores a year. Then you had the Smart Cities Mission, which allocated about 1 lakh crores for 5 years. So which means about 20,000 crores per year. More recently, they have launched an Amrut 2 mission, which has allocated some more. And the recent Finance Commission grants, the 16th Finance Commission grants, they have given something like 3.5 lakh crores roughly. So there again, it's a good increase, but a 3.5 lakh crores for a period of 5 years is still only about 70,000 crores a year. So basically the amounts are such that they are only a small portion of what the estimated expenses are. I mean, the basic message that we get from all this is that the public budget cannot meet all the expenses. It can at best meet only a small portion of the needs. That's the basic message that's coming, that we cannot be depending only on the public budget to meet all these needs. And the key question, therefore, is where will the rest come from? Now, if you have to look at where will the rest come from, let's look at some options that exist. So what I'm talking about in the next few slides is what are the local bodies' own resources. And Shalu will take that a little more. She will give you some more details. That is one. The other is the capital markets. You go to the capital markets, raise money through the private sector, raise money through the banking system, raise money through public-private partnerships. That is the second one, going to the capital markets. The third, I would say, is optimize our spending. Do we really need to spend the way we are spending? Can we optimize some of that spending? And then the last point is, are those estimations actually correct? Do we really need all that much? These are a few points that I will discuss over here. And when you talk about the local body's own revenue, it's primarily the local body's own revenue the tax revenue comes from property tax. Now, property tax is one. Non-tax revenue comes from various rents and fees and other user charges that they have. They supply water, they get some fees for water and some of these other local services. And then they also get money which is given to them by way of from the national government's programs, the state government programs. This is the devolution of funds. The Finance Commission grants, which Shalu will also talk about, these are the kinds of money that are devolved to them. And the grants against various developmental schemes. Or they borrow. Some cities are able to borrow. That's also possible. But if you look at property tax, it is money paid by the property owner. It's a tax paid by property owners. What has proved very difficult politically is that the tax rates are pretty low in many cities. Just to give you an example, in Delhi, I stay in a HIG house, and the property tax I pay is about 5,000 rupees a year. Now, I would have felt more reasonable if it was 5,000 rupees a month. But politically, it's very difficult to raise these tax rates. That's why cities are stuck with low tax rates. Apart from low tax rates, they are not even assessing all the properties. What studies have shown is only about 60 to 70% of the properties are assessed. And even with this low assessment, they don't even collect everything that they've assessed. So collection itself is only 40 to 50% of what they've assessed. So this is a triple whammy, low tax rates, not assessing everyone, not even collecting everything that you've assessed. This has been a big problem in terms of property tax collection. And if these improve, this situation can improve quite a bit. And if you look at some, these are slightly older figures, but if you look at the cost recovery for various services, you find roughly that it is not even, only a few cases are getting to 40%. Only Palakkad in Kerala has gone to about 55%. But these are slightly dated figures. More recent figures may show slightly better situation. But the cost recovery has been very poor. So it's very important to improve efficiency, very important to levy the right kind of tariffs and be able to improve cost recovery. Then talking about borrowings, municipal bodies have limited powers to borrow. They have to get the approval of the state government. They can't just do it on their own. And when you borrow through bonds, people are looking for credibility. If I buy a bond, municipal bond, will the city be able to actually pay me? Do they have the money to pay me? Many of the smaller cities don't have that credibility. And it started, bond market started with Bangalore having issued the first set of bonds. This was in 1990s. But this had to be backed by a state government guarantee, which means if the city is not able to pay you, the state government will make sure that you get paid. It's a kind of a guarantee given by the state government. And this gives more comfort to people who are paying against those bonds. Ahmedabad was the first one that had the credibility to be able to issue bonds without a state government guarantee. But after that, a few others have picked up. We've had Chennai, Madurai, a few others which have issued these bonds. But these are very few examples. These are only a small subset of cities which are able to borrow through the bond market. Smaller cities really don't have the strength to borrow like this. And when I talked about that Viksit Bharat and the criticality of cities, it's not just about the 10 big cities, it's about the 7,000 cities that we have in the country. We really need to be looking at all those cities and not just the 10 or 15 bigger cities. And the share of their own revenue. The own revenue means the money that they raise themselves and not the money that is transferred to them. The share of the own revenue over the years has been coming down, which means they are dependent on money being given to them by the higher levels of government. That again is not a very good thing, because then you can't decide what you want to do. You're often guided by the kind of programs that are being put out by the government. So that being the situation, what is it that we can do? I'm just giving you 3-4 examples of what can be done. One, a very important source is land. Land in urban areas is an extremely valuable resource, and we are not really taking advantage. We're not commercially exploiting the land to the extent that we can. So most municipal corporations have several land assets, lands and buildings. So these assets need to be commercially exploited. And in most cases, they are at prime locations and they have considerable market value. And one example I like to give is, if you look at Delhi, for example, DTC has 100 bus depots, more than 100 bus depots, and all those depots are at very prime locations in the city. That land is extremely valuable. Yet, what is it used for? It's only used for parking buses at night. So nothing is stopping them from building commercial property, building residential property on top of that depot and the higher floors. After all, the bus only needs the ground floor. Or even using that ground floor for parking private vehicles during the day when it's empty. Buses are out on the road. So just as an example, I'm not saying that this is should not be done. I'm only saying that you have a lot of land assets which we need to commercially exploit, and this can give a huge amount of revenue to the cities. And renting or leasing can use, a lot of money can come. Now, this is the model that China has used very extensively. So Chinese cities have actually financed a large share of their investments by leasing out land, using land as a commercial asset. And the Hong Kong Metro is another example where the land assets that they have, they've used it very nicely. And what they are in a situation, they get more money from the property revenue than from the fare revenue. And what assessments have shown is that the Hong Kong Metro became free. It would still be profitable because they're getting so much money from their properties that they have commercially exploited. So this is something that we have been extremely weak in doing. This is a huge opportunity. And Indian cities have really been weak. Part of the reason is that our land records, they have been a little, so who owns that land and whose title it exists, that has been a little bit of a weakness in India. And secondly, it's also in the public mind, it's a bit of a sensitive topic. People don't mind if land is given to a public agency, but if land gets given for a private agency, people feel that, no, it's our land that has been given away. So there is a bit of a sensitivity to land being given to a private enterprise. What could happen, of course, is it can be leased out instead of being sold to them. But there are many ways in which this can be overcome. So land as a resource is one. Second is look at the private sector or look at public-private partnerships. The private sector can access the capital market and bring in money through the capital market to complement or supplement the money from the public budget. But the challenge with PPPs, the challenge with the private sector is they will only invest if that venture earns a profit. The private sector is not there for charity. The private sector is there for making money. How can we structure projects in such a way that they yield enough revenue for the private sector to earn a profit if needed by some supplementing from the tax revenue? So this one has to be innovative and make this happen. So fares or other charges can't be so low that it does not give them some kind of an earning. So PPP is a good approach, but then again, the private sector is looking for profits, right? Let me move on from this. So we have to really think of innovative ways in which how we can get the private sector to also earn a profit. And this is possible. In many cases, we are not tapping the kind of revenues which the private sector will be able to tap. So private sector is generally a lot more innovative, lot more creative in how they can raise revenue. So we need to use them more extensively. Second is optimize spending. Now, are we really spending on the right kind of projects? Are we overspending in some case? And one example I like to give is, are these high cost metro rail systems that we are building, are they needed in every city where it is getting built? Are there other options which are lower cost, which, will meet the same needs? So this is something which one needs to think about, that how do we optimize our spending? We don't have money to spend on high cost if it's really not needed. Where needed, yes, but if it's not needed, let's not go for the glamour of it. Public-private partnerships are obviously good, operations, construction and operations, both public-private partnerships will help in optimize spending. That means it will help reduce the expenditure from the public budget and help get a lot of private sector leverage, commercial markets or capital markets for using this. Then last thing that I want to mention is, have these estimations of funds been made carefully? And just to show you what the HPEC report came up with, what you will see here is that urban roads is asking for almost 56% of that, 3 lakh crores that they estimated. 56%. Urban transport is mostly mass transit systems, about 14.5%. And transport support and infrastructure, another 3.2. Broadly, what I'm seeing here is about 75% of the expenditure is going only in transportation needs. Is this really needed? This is a big question in my mind. I don't have a clear answer, but I do get the feeling that perhaps it's a little too much. If I look at the McKinsey report, you see the situation is somewhat different. Here, urban roads is not so much. It's not 55% of the capital expenses. It's only about 10% of the capital expenses. Mass transit is higher than urban roads. So from this, you get a feeling affordable housing is actually more than mass transit also. So these are things where you feel that when they make these estimations, there are viewpoints in those committees. There are viewpoints, and whether those viewpoints are really getting to the right thing. Sometimes in my own mind, I feel that perhaps we don't really need that much. So this is something that really needs to be looked at carefully. So that is, then the last slide that I have is, where should money actually go? What has happened is, if you look at the expenses that have been made, the more than 5 million cities, that means the biggest cities, have actually got about almost 28% of the money. The 1 to 5 million have got about 22%. So roughly 50% has gone to the cities which are of more than 1 million. Now, what I tend to argue is these are the cities that can raise more money on their own. It's the smaller cities that have a problem. But if you look at the smaller cities, we're really not putting in enough effort on those cities. In terms of numbers, they are a large number of cities. Population may not be that high, but a fairly large number of cities. Perhaps you need to think of, shifting direction and looking at smaller cities a little more. And I think that was the intention in the last budget. The budget clearly said a focus on tier 2 and tier 3 cities. The budget also approved something called the Urban Challenge Fund. The Urban Challenge Fund really means you must get at least 50% of your money from the commercial market, from banks, from the private sector. So the last few budgets have been focusing a lot more on smaller cities and getting commercial money to finance all your urban infrastructure needs. So essentially to say that innovative financing of urban infrastructure is really going to be the key for a Viksit Bharat. I'll stop with that. Thank you very much. And back to you, Kuhu.
Thank you, OP. Thank you so much for the amazing presentation. I think, of course, it gives us a lot of insight. And I think Shalu would be the best person to add on to it.
Yeah, thank you, Kuhu. Thank you for your kind word. So I'll start with where the OP ends. He was talking about most of the cost or most of the money is going to develop the big cities, and yet they are able to generate revenues from their OSR. And I would like to add some values here. We have done one study basis the 2021 and 22 figures. If you allow, I can share that specific graph so that it would be easy for people to understand what I'm trying to say, just the specific thing. Yeah. Is it visible? So I just wanted to show that graph, and this is what similarly that OP was saying that the bigger cities are able to generate revenues, and yet they are getting the most of the grant money. So if you see here, the bigger cities which are having greater than 4 million population, their own source revenue is 71%. And if you see the smaller cities like tier 2 and tier 3 cities, less than 100K, or let's say 100K to 500K population, they are able to generate only 29% and 37% of revenue, and their grant dependency is higher. So I just wanted to show these figures, nothing other than that. I'll come to the point on the urban finance, urban infra finance, and I see this from two sides. Whenever we talk about the urban infra financing, there are two parts. One is the planning part, and second is the financing part. And whenever we talk about the planning part, the struggles or the challenges even that I have seen over the ground is there is no coordination or interdepartmental coordination between these two streams, or there are multiple institutions working in these directions. So there are development authorities, at the same time there are municipal corporations or the urban local bodies that we see as a primary institution to provide service delivery, and always there is a tussle going on, who is responsible to provide. And as a citizen, whenever we think about services, we only see urban local bodies to provide facilities. But at the same time, planning department is equally responsible or play a significant role to design things, to manage things when it's come for the urban infra. So I recently engaged in Assam regarding the same engagement. So we are engaging with Assam Dawa, how the planning and finance part can talk to each other. And the intervention that we are trying to do, I can say the Janagras 2 cent for this is we are trying to develop the city actions plan. So whenever we talk about planning, if you go to any city engineer and you ask what is the approach that you follow to build any infra or even to plan what city needs. So they're like, it faces a need. So whenever, let's say a road is broken, or if there is any pothole, they will try to solve it on the immediate basis because it's the pressure that they are getting from the people, right? So there are processes on paper, but on day-to-day basis, they struggle to follow this. So we came with this intervention that we are calling City Action Plan. Basically, where citizens are also playing a part. It's a democratic process where city officials are there, where citizens are there, and they are making a city action plan and planning beforehand. It's not a last minute exercise when budget is coming. So at the beginning or at the middle of financial year, they will list down all the kind of need that are required to meet the service delivery requirement of the people. So it is like that they are creating a shelf of project beforehand, and then they are seeking fund. Okay, let's say they have 10 sort of projects and they are saying, okay, do we have money for this, or do we need to plan beforehand for this? So this is the city action plan engagement that we are trying to do. And the next part is the city investment framework. Where will the money come from? So how this will be implemented at the city level? So the next thing is to create a framework where you can see which sort of funds are available for these type of projects, what they can do, and how they can move ahead. So the one thing that I'm currently engaged in, so bridging the gap of planning and finance. And I totally agree with the points that OP has raised regarding the own source revenue, regarding the current situation of municipal borrowing. So whenever we talk about the finance, there are three segments. One is the own revenue that a city has. Second one is the grant that they get from state or central. And the third part is the municipal borrowing part. And I think these have been covered very well in the previous conversation. One thing that I would like to raise here is that there is need to a improve the current revenue streams that we have, let's say property tax, water charges, and over the period municipal revenues has been like the property tax only. So whenever we think about even municipal revenue, the only picture comes as the property tax. So there is need to uh, bring other potential that can support to generate the revenue. Let's say user charges are there, but again the Indian, I would say the current situation that we have, we don't want to pay money because the kind of services that we are getting doesn't allow us, or we are not in that situation, I would say, in the that mentality is not there to pay that money. But if we if a city doesn't have own source revenue, they won't be able to generate all the infra that citizen needs. So there is need to see diverse sort of avenues that a city can create. At the same time, uh, how we can optimize these revenues. And I totally agree with the point of optimization of spending. I have seen many instances at ground when there is no planning and expenditures are happening. And whenever we think, why this has happened, what are the process that you have followed? And I'm not saying it's their problem. I'm just trying to say at the ground, processes are there, but implementation is very difficult in the current scenario. So I will end my thoughts here, and we are open for the questions. If anybody has any questions, please ask. I think they can unmute themselves or they can ask in the chat box.
Yes, they can definitely ask in the chat box, and I think somebody has already started with the questions. So I'll just take, I think it's from Kuril. He is saying, what are the difficulties in levying property taxes in the cities and what are the possible solutions?
Okay. Uh, I'll start with the things that I've seen on ground. So there is a general mentality. If you take something, then you give something. It's a general mindset that we have in our normal life. And in terms of property tax, it's not a service, it's a property tax that you are paying. So in the case of property tax, all the structural issues OPS shared. First one is that uh, even though the technology has arrived, the GIS activity to map all the properties, but its intervention, or I would say its implementation on ground, has not happened in that way that it was supposed to. Most of the time, it is tender out to a third party, and there is no, I would say, monitoring from the corporation side. In most of the cases that I've seen, there is no monitoring. That because of the evaluation of property is incorrect. And when the data is wrong and the bill that you are getting, first layer is that you are getting the maybe the wrong bill, the wrong property tax. And sometimes there is, I would say, the absorptive capacity issue. They don't have so many people to deliver bill to each people. And even if we have technology, let's say SMS, that sending SMS to people, uh, since it is not related to anything that will stop your service. And I think we have suggested many ways, uh, for the penal provision, please cut people water connection so that they pay their property taxes. But whenever you try to build such cases, the one thing that comes, we are a welfare state, so we can't cut the basic services that people require. So it's very difficult to impose such thing at ground level. And these are the, I'm telling the all implementable issues. All the structural issues have been covered in the conversation. Yes. OP, if you want to add anything, over to you.
No, that's perfect, Shalu. That's perfect. There's one other element that comes in, it's about levying a property tax. Property tax is levied. The issue is not about levy. The issue is more about how much are you levying. And
Correct.
there is a political concern. They say if you increase the property tax, I'll lose the next election.
Hmm.
So that's the kind of thing that comes in. Most people will say, okay, I'll raise the property tax, but if I use that property tax to deliver better services, people may not mind it.
Hmm.
But they say, I have raised the property tax, my next election, the people will get the benefits. So I have often argued, you try to raise the property tax in the early stage of his term,
Okay.
so that he has enough time to be able to deliver a better service before the next election comes. So this is largely a political issue, to be able to raise the property tax. Most cities are levying property tax. I think
Hmm.
the bigger challenge is, why are you not assessing and why are you not collecting? That, I think, the point that Shalu made is absolutely right. If they don't pay, what do? You can disconnect certain things. But these
Hmm.
are very basic things. Disconnecting them is also a challenge. So it's not an easy task. There's no cut and dry answer. But I think Shalu's point, I fully agree with it on that. This other thing about what about penalizing them by fine or imprisonment? Imprisonment is possible. Fine, he's not paying the tax. Why will he pay the fine?
Hmm.
Right? But I think the idea of imprisoning some of them, not paying a property tax today is not a criminal offense. Unfortunately, it doesn't come within the purview of what we call the Criminal Procedure Code. It's a civil offense.
Hmm.
And for a civil offense, you can't imprison. But that idea is a good one. That's when people will listen.
If anybody has any questions, I think Shalu was right when she just mentioned if you can type it in the chat box, or if somebody wants to talk to our speakers, they can just raise their hands, and I'll make sure that you're able to talk to our speakers. So I'll change the settings and allow you to talk to our speakers. Just raise your hands if you have any questions and if you want to talk to OP or Shalu. I think the audience members are a little bit shy in terms of talking to the speakers. I'll stick if you want to write your questions in the Q&A box. Yes, we just received one question. Urbanization is the future, but our cities are completely dependent. Should we make them autonomous?
Shalu, you want to try that? You're the ones who talk about devolution.
I think you would be a good person to talk about autonomy.
I think the person wants to, once OP, you take the question, I'll just unmute him because I think he wants to have a conversation.
Okay. Why don't we let him in?
Unmute? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Kural.
Sir, good evening, sir. Sir, I hope you remember me. I was one of your students in the Lokniti class.
Oh, okay. Good. At
It's
this
nice
age, you meet so many students. It's a delight to always meet them.
It is nice to meet you again, sir.
Pleasure.
Sir, personally, I feel that exactly the same question as which I asked in the comment box. So, urbanization is the urban centers are the engines that actually provides economic growth to us. Economic growth primarily takes place in the urban centers and mostly in metropolitan cities, which is more than 10 lakh population. So, but urban governance is far behind the financial dominance they possess. So, is it the only way to? I personally feel that the only way we can remedy this problem is to change the power structure in the fundamental level by constitutionally providing self-governance structures to the cities.
So good, very good question. It's actually a big debate that is going on. The whole purpose of the 74th constitutional amendment was that more power should be given to the cities. See, what had happened in the original constitution was it recognized only two levels of government, the national government and the state government. The local government, that means whether it's a panchayat or whether it's the city government, was not recognized in the original constitution. That's why the 74th constitutional amendment recognized them. But then they also said states may devolve certain powers. It listed some 18 functions and said the states may. Now that may is a problem, because the moment you say may, that means you may not also. And you look at the political economy of things. If you have a mayor of Bombay, believe me, nobody will care for the chief minister of Maharashtra. And this has been the experience all over the world, that when local mayors get powerful, nobody recognizes that second level. Recently, we heard so much news all over the world about the mayor of New York. Everyone knows the mayor of New York, but nobody knows who's the governor of New York State. So this is a bit of a fear. That's the reason why the state level bureau or the state level political leadership has been reluctant to give powers to the local level. The original constitution, you may ask, why didn't we have it in the original constitution? Remember, the background to the original constitution was soon after independence. And how did the British walk into India so easily? They walked in because we were all fighting each other. This country had 600 small princely states. They were all fighting each other. So they walked in very easily, sided one, defeated the other, and then bullied the guy that they supported. See, that has been the history how the British walked into India. So the constitution makers were conscious of the fact that there are fairly strong centrifugal forces in the country, given our diversity, language, culture, so many different things, there is diversity. That's why the original constitution tended to have much more focus on the central government. Today, I think that situation has changed. We are clearly one country. Despite our diversity, we have lived together, unlike many of the other countries around us, which have not been able to survive. But the political economy today is state governments don't want to give up.
Sir, I actually concur with you. I think the most damaging thing the partition has done is installed a fear in our constitution makers that somehow centralization of power is the only way to hold this country together. So, it's not just the state governments. State governments are least to blame. Even union government is not ready to share the power with the state government itself. Then how can we request state governments to share with the local power centers?
Correct.
But
Correct.
I think unless a radical reform has to be, I think we are at a critical juncture in our political history. Unless some constitutional revolution happens, I think this problem will, in different form, it will continue. So I don't think we'll ultimately find a permanent solution to this unless a proper three-tier structure with adequate protections to the bottom two tiers are provided. Yeah, that's what my opinion, sir.
Good. Okay, I think Kural has finished. Anyone else?
Anyway, thank you for answering the question, sir.
Thank you, Kural. No, I'll just make one comment. Honestly, my view is, if you want to discipline cities in terms of their expenses, we talked about not wasting money on things that you don't really need. I think the best way to do it is you decide on a certain amount of money that needs to be given to the cities and give it. You don't have to decide how much for water, how much for sanitation, how much for transport. Let him decide what they need more, let them prioritize. So like the Finance Commission grants that have just been announced, I would say whatever money the central government is giving for other schemes, you add it to the Finance Commission grant and give it to the cities on some kind of a formula and say, this is it, no more. Use it whatever way you like, you are losing the election or whatever it is.
Sir, if I like to add on, even central government is not ready to transfer more than 5 to 2%. They are providing central CSS.
So let's not go into that. See, the point is, whatever you want to give, why are you deciding what they should spend it on? Let them decide what they need. See, the moment you say, if you have a need, you come to me, I'll give you, then they get indisciplined. I can assure you that the moment you say that I'm giving you so much and no more, many of the cities that have built metros today would not have built it, because then the responsibility goes to them.
Yeah, I agree with you, sir. You're right.
Okay, let's move on to anyone
sir,
else.
Sorry, sir. One more question. Sir, it's regarding the pollution in cities. I think the recent major issue is like rising extraordinary levels of pollution in Indian cities. So like I personally living in Mumbai, it may not be as polluted as Delhi, but it is actually AQI is getting worse each day. Is there any way we can
Chalu, you want to attempt that?
I mean, not specifically to Mumbai, but in terms of Delhi, I have some personal views. So whenever we talk about pollution, there are two, three key things. Why is it happening? First one is the dust, which is I think 25 to 30% contributor for the pollution. And second one is because of the geography that we are in a plain area, we say the Indo-Gangetic Plain area, Punjab, Delhi, Haryana, all these states or union territories are there. So two, three things that even I have read in the articles, maybe not be the right person to comment on it, but on the stubble burning part, because there is a very, I would say, lower time from cutting the paddy and then going for the wheat. If they can bring some, I mean, these are the solutions that are in the market, but if they can change the type of seed that they are using. I have heard that in the Punjab mostly the Pusa 44 is used as a paddy seeds, and it takes, the farmers are using because it is it is providing higher productivity, and number of days are higher because of that to get that productivity, and it is directly related to the MSP, because in MSP this is the one type of I would say seeds that are highly required. So the whole chain is there, from growing these type of paddy to selling it to MSP. If we, I mean, when I say we, I'm talking about both citizen and government. If we can bring some other alternatives that will increase the span of cutting paddy and growing wheat, could be a possible way to solve this thing, I think, which is very, I would, in on discussions everywhere when we talk about during October to December season. These are my views. I'm not an expert in air pollution, honestly, but yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Shalu. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kunal. Back to you, Kuhu.
So I think it was a good discussion. I think there is one more question. Yes, there is by Mr. Pulkit Agarwal. You mentioned the planning versus financing parts, departments not coordinating with each other. How can that be changed? In Janagara's work, what have you found effective in improving that coordination? I think
Sure.
Shalu, it's just directly. Yeah.
Yes. One of the thing I'll tell you that that I have done today only. So while so I'll tell you the process. First one is you identify the projects. Next one is you shortlist the project, and third one is you identify money to implement those projects. And whenever it's come to prioritize a project, there is a shelf of project, basically a list of needs or wish list that a city wants to do. And second one is the prioritization. So in my recent work, what we have done, we have created a prioritization matrix, which is basically a number of questions which is talking about environment, I would say governance, as well as the feasibility. And what we have asked, bring all the related stakeholders at one table to rank. Okay, in this project, how will you rank from 1 to 5 in terms of feasibility and in the impact? So there are two things. First one is not feasibility, the affordability, and second one is the impact. So we have created such metrics or such tool which forced everyone to bring on the same table. So this is the way that we proposed to bring coordination, bring interdepartmental coordination in our work. So when they are sitting at the same place and discussing, and I think different departments have different challenges. So it became a forum to discuss things and come to a conclusion, and then prioritize needs, which came from citizens also. I think I was able to answer your question. If you have anything, you can unmute yourself if you see clarity.
Pulkit, would you like me to enter you in the conversation? You can just please raise your hand. Or if anybody else wants to join the conversation, or if has any questions that they want to ask themselves. No follow-ups. I think your answer aptly answered all his questions. Just a final call to all the audience members. If you have any questions, any final thoughts about today's discussion, please put up in the chat box and we'll be more than happy to take it. Okay, so I think we are already, actually we are running on the clock. So any closing remarks, OP, Shalu, for today's discussion?
I would only say cities are absolutely critical. Financing needs are critical, but it can't be business as usual. It can't be the way we have been doing it all this while. I think we need to think more aggressively, more innovatively. That's the only way. This business as usual is not going to help us at all. That's the only remark I'll make.
Thank you, OP. Shalu, any remarks from your end? Any closing remarks from your end?
I mean, I would say for city, every day is dynamic and we need dynamic solutions. So same thing that OP was saying, we can't go with the business as usual. We need to be innovative to meet such dynamic situations with dynamic solutions.
Yeah. So with that note, I would like to extend my thank you to all the participants for joining us today and contributing to the session. And a special thanks to our distinguished speakers, Dr. O.P. Agarwal and Shalu Sapnani, for sharing their valuable insights. Today's discussion highlighted the critical role of innovative financing in building resilient, inclusive, and sustainable urban infrastructure. And we sincerely hope that it must have sparked new ideas and perspectives for everyone who joined. And on behalf of Indian School of Public Policy, I extend my gratitude to our speakers and to all of you for joining us today for this session. And if you have any further follow-up questions or if you want to connect, please write to us at contact@ispp.org.in. With that note, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye, Shalu. Bye, Kuhu.
Thank
Bye,
you,
sir.
Great meeting you. Thank you, Kuhu,
Great
for
meeting you.
inviting me.
If you are in Delhi, we should meet sometime on the campus.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll come
Let me know.
soon.
Let me know.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Kuhu.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.